Welcome back to the MMA Creators Podcast. Today we are joined by a very special guest, friend and MMA documentary savant. Do you like that for an intro?
I've never even heard of the word savant. It's first for me. It sounded nice, so I appreciate the...
A wordsmith. So for a little bit of context, Leo runs a YouTube channel called Leo Cooper MMA where he tells stories in the MMA world. So I actually think there's a lot of similarity between the two. But regardless, we have Paul on the pod today, joined by myself and Leo as always. And today the main topic of conversation I think we should get stuck into is obviously UFC 311.
Is this the first one that you've done in person together?
No,
okay.
No, we rented a studio I think we rent, it's free. Yeah. Shout out Creators House in Camden. They're basically under 25s, you can book it in advance. And it's free. It's great. The only thing, it only comes with one camera, so we have to bring our own. But, you know, Shure mics, all of that, MV7Bs, it's great.
That's great, yeah. I think you have
it's really good, actually. I can't lie.
That dramatically, I don't even put that out.
Yeah, it's too good.
Because the booking system gets quite booked out anyway, so I think if I start making content on that, I've done that before. Don't. And I didn't know what gatekeeping meant until more recently, but that is the only thing that I gatekeep, because it is very, very useful. Because like Leo says, it has all the equipment. You can rent it for free. You could do studio setups where it's more photography, or you can do the podcast. Outside of that, no, we've actually done a few together. I know that you didn't watch the full card. Casual, I'll have to drop that in there. So I'll start with the main one. Obviously, we had the whole fiasco between Arman and Islam. Arman pulls out. Manny Moicano steps in. How did you think this fight was going to go? And then how did it play out to how it actually went?
I think it played out exactly how I thought it was going to play out, to be honest. I think Moicano is a very exciting fighter, exciting personality. He's always in an exciting fight, I feel like. I can't really picture a boring Moicano fight that comes to my mind, at least not recently. But, you know, I just did not see it other than an Islam first round finish, if I'm honest. Like, Moicano is good, but there's just a level between...
I think there's three levels.
Yeah, there's probably a few levels.
That's true.
Honest, yeah. I thought it was really interesting though when he was being interviewed how Joe Rogan said to him, like, you know, how do you feel taking this on one day's notice? And then he replied with saying, you know, this was a lifetime's notice for me. So it just shows, I think, the type of person that he is, you know, not making an excuse, saying this is everything I've kind of worked my whole life towards. And it must, I mean, there's nothing worse than being stopped in the first round, really. But, you know, take it on the chin. I think that's why Moicano really rose to stardom anyway, was it all started off really when he took the fight against Dos Anjos, 4 days notice.
That was the turn.
Yeah, that was the turning point, right? And I think the fact that he took this fight on such short notice, you know, there's nothing to, I mean, he's gone on probably with a fatter paycheck than he was going to get if he was fighting.
Well, apparently fatter than Israel, which I find...
Reportedly, yeah.
Nah, no way.
That's the salaries have come back, and I was saying to Leo earlier, different commissions have different protocols, and some commissions will release salaries, and I believe some off the top of my head are California and Australia, for example. So if people fight under those commissions, you'll see the salaries which have been paid out because they make it public. So that is now public information, I believe. So the only thing I can think of off the back of that is that he's getting the crazy pay-per-view deal.
Oh, yeah, I mean, he is.
Obviously,
he would be anyway.
The Harmon breakdown, but again, just sort of throwing that over to you, maybe adding on a little bit more to Paul. Where do we go with the conversation around Islam now? Because you're right, it is 3 levels above. But what do we do with it now? What's next?
I mean, if it weren't for Bilal Muhammad, I would for one be championing. I mean, I'll champion it anyway. Run up to welterweight, get the double championship. Normally, I wouldn't say that. We spoke about it before. I'm not vocal about, you know, double champions and super fights because we've seen them too much, and it tends to hold up divisions and just leave people on ice. So normally, I wouldn't be against it, but I think Islam is one of the rare cases where he's actually earned it. Is it 4 title defenses now?
I believe so.
That's more than Khabib. Most ever in lightweight. More than Khabib. I mean, who else?
I need to throw something out there because I'm like you. I don't always like to do the jumping of the divisions. I think the natural conversation will be Islam to welterweight. I actually think the follow matchup.
I think I know what you're going to say. Iliad's for it?
Islam to high. And I know it's involved twice. I know we've seen that. But in my opinion, whether it's next or not, I don't know. That's a different conversation. But there's more intrigue that way for me than there is to 170. What do you reckon about that?
I think anyone that fights Topuria at the moment is an exciting fight. I mean, straight up, such an exciting fighter, so good at talking. He's got every single style point that you can give him. I think I saw your tweet. What was interesting, especially if that fight then does happen, it makes it interesting as well as that Islam's wins have all come against former featherweights. And then it would be another featherweight.
Oh, that's true. Moicano as well. Yeah, I didn't even think about that.
Moicano,
Yeah.
Charles Oliveira, Volk.
Oh, and Charles, yeah.
To be honest, I would like to see the Ilya fight, but I wouldn't be opposed to seeing Charles Oliveira against Islam again.
I'm not mad about that either.
Yeah.
I like that. Charles looked way better than I thought he would against Chandler. I thought maybe Asia would show a little bit. Same for Chandler too, but he looked good. He looked very good. Good enough to beat Makhachev, I don't know. I don't know if anyone could beat him outside of Topuria. So I guess that's half of the reason why we want to see that matchup, because probably is his toughest one there. I think he makes short work of Bilal. Obviously, we probably won't get that fight.
You think? Really?
I do, yeah. I think he beats Bilal soundly. Yeah.
I don't know about that, you know.
No, I'm not confident.
Really? Well, what's the argument?
He just chucks things in conversation.
No, we normally agree on things.
Hold on. We need to back up this thing, because
I think that's fair. I don't think there's any problem with saying that. I don't think the size difference is going to be massive. I think that's the only argument you could use for Bilal if you were going to make an argument, because moving up a division is always going to have those questions. But skill for skill, you tell me where Islam Makhachev's worse than Bilal.
I think it's...
I don't think you can.
And also they have trained together, so they'll know how those rounds
And I believe Bilal's actually spoken about that before. Maybe it was more about Khabib, but I think it's representative of Khabib and Islam as a whole, as a unit, as a group of them. Yeah.
The fact that you said Khabib there is important, right? Because there's one thing that I wanted to mention which impressed me most about Islam Makhachev, and we'll come on to the co-main in a second, but the reason that's relevant is that last name. And I know Islam doesn't actually hold that last name, right? Makhachev, of course, but he is the predecessor to Khabib Nurmagomedov. He is also the #1 student of arguably one of the greatest, not arguably, definitely is one of the greatest MMA coach of all time, Nurmagomedov. The reason why I'm so impressed with Islam is because it's one thing to become a phenomenal fighter and to become world champion, but to become a world champion with that much weight, pressure, and attention on your journey after getting flatlined as well, by the way, early in your career, and to constantly have all of those eyeballs and that narrative build on you every single fight, injury, quick turnarounds, difficult matchups, and just go boom, 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 and still stay on top. That's why I look at it now and I think there's no debate in what career is more impressive. And I don't always like to compare, but it's just that added element for me of why Islam to the Khabib conversation is now, it's just different for me. Doing it for the first time is always impressive, but doing it with that on your back, I don't know. What do you think about that?
I think it's a case of career and fighter. Who's the better fighter? If you ask me that now, I'd say Khabib in a heartbeat. I don't think anyone's better than Khabib ever. In terms of domination, pure domination, I don't think that's a crazy take.
I would tend to kind of agree, to be honest. I mean, the one that I would agree with you on that is that Khabib didn't look in trouble.
Ever. This is my point. Not at all. Honestly.
And he finished McGregor, he finished Gaethje,
Poirier.
Thompson. You know, you look at, again, it's so hard to look back and compare because everyone's at a different stage.
It depends what you value more, right?
I kind of want to go back to what you were saying about Bilal. I think we can go there because I think, you know, you mentioned the size. I think the size is a massive factor first off. I thought that Islam looked like a small fighter against Poirier. Personally,
I've got a hot take on Islam. Oh,
you got one as well. You're going out as well.
He's not, and I can say this, sorry Paul to cut you off.
That's all good.
Sorry, back over to you. And I'm only saying this because I did see him in Abu Dhabi. I stood next to him. People don't realise that maybe there's a day where Paddy Pimlet's in the same cage as Islam Makhachev. Paddy Pimlet's having a fair size advantage on Islam. I don't think people realise that. He's taller, he's longer, and I'm not trying to do the matchup, I'm just talking purely physical. Islam's in phenomenal shape. He's got dense muscle mass. He's always elite. He walks out of camp 180.
I don't think he's that big of a fighter. I really don't.
He's not that big. You talk about these drastic weight cuts. Maybe his weight cuts are big, but 180 is not a big lightweight.
No.
I see he wouldn't be any bigger than a Mark Diakase.
I think, I think the Bilal fight, I don't think will ever happen.
No, of
first
course,
off.
yeah.
But Bilal had a very similar story to Leon, I think, with his rise. Like, when Bilal beat Leon, when we were in Manchester. Do you know what it is? I, in a weird way, not that I necessarily enjoy to see Leon lose, because he was, I mean, I literally got to see him knock out Usman in person. Like, Leon.
No way, were you there in person?
I was there.
Oh, I thought you were going to say for 286, because I was there for that, but
I was there in Salt Lake. So like, there's always going to be an attachment for me for Leon being one of my favorite fighters of all time, and he has had a phenomenal career. But seeing the way that he smashed Leon, I don't think you can ever you just got to sit back and go, do you know what, mate? And people call that a boring fight. I didn't think that was a boring fight. I thought that was a phenomenal performance, and the same reasons that people kind of hated Leon, and then when he became champion, everyone loved him, was the exact same narrative for Bilal for me. And I think Bilal, bro, you can't sleep. I don't think anyone can make easy work of Bilal.
No, I wouldn't say it would be easy work. I think he'd beat Shavkat, but I think Islam would beat him.
That's a good fight, to be fair.
I mean, that's the next to make.
Yeah.
I'm assuming it was. I mean, it was the fight to happen, of course, if it wasn't for injuries and circumstances.
The interesting thing about Bilal is what you touched on there is not an easy fight for anyone. I know people get uncomfortable around these conversations if we mention names like GSP, but if you think of the talent GSP had, one of the main areas was the fact that he could go into the weakness of his opponent and win the fight there. We saw him do that against Wonderboy. We saw him do that against Leon. We saw him do that against grapplers, against strikers, and we've seen him against every different style and difficult style. So I'm with you. You just have to kind of sit there and appreciate the run and the momentum he's put together. And when you talk about momentum and run, I don't believe there's a better UFC run active in this entire roster. Maybe John Jones is in the conversation, sure, than Merab Dvalishvili.
I was hoping you were segueing there.
What did you think of that performance? Because we were actually talking to pull back the curtain a little bit. We were talking to Jake Fine, which is the videographer. Shout out, Jake, for Al Jab, obviously knows Merab.
Oh yeah, of course.
And you may as well, actually, before we get into it, why don't you tell people why you were actually in Salt Lake? Because there's an interesting story behind that.
Yeah, so I was in Salt Lake because it was just after the UFC fight night in London when Aspinall...
Volkov?
No, it was the one after. It was the Blades one, yeah. Because Volkov was in the March, right? And then he fought Blades and he did his knee. And I got in touch with Block Asset from like that week, and then they ended up flying me out to Vegas and Salt Lake for 2 weeks, like 2 weeks afterwards, to do a documentary on Merab for his fight against Jose Aldo. So it was such, I mean, you can go out, the documentary's out on Block Asset YouTube. It's called The Machine. And yeah, it was like a week in Vegas in Merab's house. I wasn't actually staying in Merab's house, but it was like a week of, you know, going to Syndicate MMA, going to Merab's house. Merab and Aldo live across the road from each other. Went to the UFC PI like 3 times. I had like the nicest lobster mac and cheese in the PI. It was fucking phenomenal. Saw Deontay Wilder. He was training there when I was there. And it was sick. On the Saturday before we flew out to Salt Lake, we actually ended up, it was me, Jake, Aljo, Merab, Nazim Sadiqov and Matt Favola all watching the Cheeto versus Dominic Cruz fight. Fight night. Literally all in his living room with Aljo's like UFC belt there. And then we all went to this event afterwards. It was the what's it called now? It's like called Rollers BJ Day, something along those High Rollers. That's it. Oh yeah, High Rollers. Have you heard of it?
Yeah.
Jiu-jitsu guy, but doesn't know anything about it.
No, I know the name.
Yeah,
I love
High
jiu-jitsu,
Rollers.
but I'm not in the circle. But
It was
I know the
it was
name.
mad. It was literally like everyone was so high. They were like having like smoke machines of like just a massive burning like gun that was like burning weed and just like smoking it out. You could go up and just get free joints, and there was a whole room of like a table bigger than this of people just rolling blunts and just passing out and like non-stop. There was a free bar which was like a Dr. Have you heard of Dr. Dabba?
No.
It's one of Sean O'Malley's sponsors. It's essentially like a super complex vape.
I know what the air.
Yeah, and then basically you burn resin, which is like the highest form of THC. Yeah, and I was a pretty big stoner at the time, but I hadn't really smoked that trip. Obviously, I was yeah.
This is a recipe for disaster.
I hadn't eaten anything all day because I was filming all day.
That's why everyone always says, I've never heard a story heard about insurance. And they haven't it 16 and they've done it in ages. Everything wasn't going my way that time.
No, but I was like a legit stoner. Like I was smoking like 3.5 grams a day, like a legit stoner, right? And
1 year clean.
1 year clean, by the way, yeah. Appreciate
It was
it.
fudgy, but the table was too long.
That's all I can say.
I got short arms.
So Matt Frivola was competing. He was competing on that. And I got to know his dad that day, Saul Frivola, who's such a funny guy, such a nice guy. And I'm like, well, I think we're doing a bit of filming and stuff. And then Saul comes up, he's like, oh, come with me. And he takes me to this like fucking, this weed bar, this weed-free bar. And he was like, what do you want? I was like, mate, I don't know, just give me anything. And he's like, okay, go for it. And he gave me, like, the bartender gave me like this resin vape, and I took a hit of it. And I went, I started coughing straight away. I could not contain it. Yeah, I just started coughing straight away. And obviously the guys were like looking at me like, what a fucking lightweight this guy is. And he's like, oh, you've still got more left. So now I've gone again. So
You've got no
essentially
choice.
done 2 big bong hits of this like super high level THC resin. I've not smoked weed in a week and I've not eaten anything all day.
Or not?
No. But I got high very quickly, and I ended up like not long after like being in conversation with the head of High Rollers, and I was like speaking, like trying to have like an actual conversation. But like the whole time I was conversating very well, but in my head I was like, I can feel that I need to be sick. Like I could feel that it was coming on, and I had to take a minute, and I was like, oh, like I swiftly ended the conversation, and it was about half an hour after I finished taking the vape, and I had to go outside and force myself to throw up because I was gonna whitey otherwise. It was like this isn't white, but like I would have preferred as opposed to like not being able to hold it and just spew it. I was like, I'm going to take the initiative and whitey myself.
You're so mature.
But like, you know, we speak about Merab, and you know, one thing that I had the privilege of is literally seeing his fight camp and seeing the dedication that he had. Like, he's an absolute lunatic, but he's phenomenal. Like, I got to be in Syndicate watching him and Aljo spar together, 5-5s, cage side.
What was that like?
Oh, mate, amazing.
It's a different level, right?
Amazing. Yeah. I mean, you look at what they both have achieved, they're arguably the 2 greatest bantamweights in UFC history. And
yes, I'd agree.
With Dom Cruz maybe floating around that.
Yeah, but I think that, I think...
However you want to dice it up.
Yeah.
Good point.
And, you know, Merab is such a nice guy. And just want to deviate quickly from Merab, you know, because I was there at the time that Aljo was the champ, and it's still, you know, people still don't realize how good Aljo was.
It frustrates me.
Like people
so much.
hate,
we
hate on Aljo, and it's so crazy because, you know, people want to attack him for his personality. They say he's cheesy. He's a really, really solid dude. But man, this guy is such an elite fighter, and it's a shame that people don't really recognize that just because of how he won the title from Peter Yan. And I just wanted to just say a piece on like how incredible Aljo is, and like Aljo and Merab, you know, so hospitable to someone like me who just basically walked into their houses essentially, and they were so nice. They're super great people, super humble people, super hardworking people, and truthfully. This fight, I didn't think Merab was going to win. And I said this to Jake, and I said this to you, like, for me, I will forever be Merab Dvalishvili fan because of, you know, everything that we got to experience together. But I just, you know, when you hear the Nurmagomedov name, you know what they're like. Even though Umar didn't really have that many big top 15 wins because no one really wanted to fight him, apart from his great performance against Sandhagen, I just thought, you know, I saw the thing on Merab's leg as well. I was like, all these factors, I was like, I really want Merab to win. But I just didn't think it'd be possible. I didn't think like it'd get blown out of the water.
I mean, the odds reflected something like that, didn't
Yeah.
it? Crazy.
But-
I've never understood it.
I mean, I'm so glad that I got proven wrong. I'm so glad.
I think one of the
It
things,
was one of the greatest fights in bantamweight history. It was phenomenal.
So good.
I think one of the things that stood out to me most, and let me know what you think about this, Leo, and Leo, you can sort of give me more maybe of the actual breakdown of the fight, but one of the things that impressed me the most from Merab is this was all, like you said there, to a certain extent, stacked against it. This was all stacked against him. The exact same way that Aljamain Sterling was forced back into his title shot against Sean. We've seen the behind the scenes of those and those conversations. The exact same thing happened from Merab. We had conversations with people that were around that situation that sort of echoed that. And Khabib even came out in the conversation and said, this is what I think the UFC have done. So I'm not saying that's right or wrong. That's not really my point of the conversation. My point is, everything was against him here. He's just gone out and won the title, hasn't had a victory lap, pushed back into a fight camp, injuries, not in a good way. And the reason why he had an additional chip on his shoulder, which I heard him speak about multiple times this week, which I thought was interesting, was I didn't have that cousin. I didn't have an Amalgamated who had the big gyms and legends. And yes, you came from a fantastic lineage, and Abdul Manap is a legend. But Merab is just a guy who was on a construction site in Georgia who had to fly over to New York with no grasp of the language, no
Crazy.
hope, really, whilst losing his first two fights and getting to where he's got off nothing but literally the grimiest hard work, as you just attest to there, which kind of flows nicely into the fight because, as we said in the build-up, that had to be one of the main factors. He had to put his foot on the gas pedal. But in regards to the performance, what did you think?
Well, it kind of, I don't want to say I predicted it. We spoke about it. I did say Merab would win. But the big factor that I spoke about before was it was the strength over the size. Merab was going to look smaller in there, but I vouched that he was going to be a lot stronger than Umar. And of course, with the cardio, with the pacey sets, which, to be honest, after that fight, I don't think there's any doubt that he has the best cardio in the UFC. Ever. We can say ever. Honestly, ever is probably a fair
You need
take.
to put ever out there.
It's crazy.
Inhuman. Honestly, it's quite strange.
It can't.
I mean, the way I saw the fight, the first two rounds, Merab lost, but they were close rounds.
Yeah, for sure.
But after that second round, mate, he had nothing. Like, he had nothing to give. It was like 3 shutout rounds from Merab, and he made it look easy.
The last one was close. I will say that. If you
Last one was
Close
close.
till the end.
strikes.
I mean, yeah, it's because it was. But I'd say it's Umar. Umar had a strong start to the 5th round, but I mean,
It was that big shot Merab landed near the end that cemented it, and then the takedown.
But Merab's strength, I mean, you talk about strength, I mean, like,
It's crazy.
Umar's such a good wrestler, and he couldn't do anything to Merab. Yeah. And Merab was taking him down. Merab broke the GSP record.
91 takedowns now.
Yeah.
All time.
Peter speak about that because
Freakish.
It's insane.
My thought is this: 135 pounds, from my experience, maybe you have a different experience, from being in the MMA space firsthand, knowing the fighters, seeing the fighters, different organisations, not just the UFC. 135 pounds, in my opinion, is the sweet spot for the most talented fighters in all of MMA. I believe it has the deepest roster in regards to talent. Maybe it doesn't have as big a names like a lightweight division, sure, but I believe it's the most talent rich. So to be at the top with 12 win streak now in that division, beating GSP's record, beating in the run-up a double champion in Henry Cejudo, a champion in Sean O'Malley, a legend and champion in Jose Aldo, which is ticking off name after name. So there's a reason why he was there with a chip on his shoulder saying he doesn't deserve it. Of course he deserves that, and Merab knows he does as well. But I'd be pissed off. I fought all of these guys, and I had to kick up a fuss.
I think there was a lot of factors. I mean, the fact that, Merab's Georgian and Umar was Russian, that's a big one, I don't want to go back on what you were saying, but the chip on his shoulder about, not having the cousin with a big gym and stuff. What kind of rhetoric that was kind of trying to be told was that, Merab doesn't really, give back to Georgia. I mean, I can tell you from first-hand experience, the Georgians fucking love Merab, and he does a lot for his country. He does everything for his country. He doesn't have any tattoos, and he tattooed the Georgian flag because remember when the UFC basically got rid of their flag policy?
Yes, yeah.
He was so proud and so upset that he couldn't, show off his country that he had it tattooed on him. He is a hero in Georgia. And I think, you talk about that list of guys that he's beaten. I struggle to find any other bantamweight, apart from maybe Aljamain Sterling, who could beat all of them in a row.
Yeah. I think he's
as well as one guy you out.
Brother.
Yeah.
That's
Ramesh Peter.
one of the most impressive performances
50-45.
I've ever seen in MMA as a fan. I've seen performances which are more exciting. I've seen performances which are more I haven't seen more conclusive performance, actually. That was a shutout. From first minute to the last against Petillon. Who does that to Petillon? No one does that to Petillon is the answer to that. The question is now for you, Leo. What do we do next with the bantamweight division?
I'm drawing blanks, to be honest with you. I don't know. You read out all of those lists of names, all the top guys.
There's only one answer, I think.
I mean, there's talks of a rematch. That would seem to be immediate conversation. I know you're not a fan of rematches. It's hard to argue that after a fight like that. That was pretty damn exciting.
No, there's not going to be a rematch between those.
I don't want it to happen, personally. But throw me a name. Give me a bone.
I know what's going to happen.
Okay.
Sean O'Malley. Sean O'Malley is what will happen. I guarantee.
You reckon?
They've already created the narrative. They've already created it. He sat ringside. The day in the press conference was said, Sean O'Malley will be front row. Look at who else is there? Who else stands out 135 that says, I have to fight for the title? Who?
No one, apart from Perrian.
And that fight doesn't appeal to Shibidi.
Well, yeah.
And no one wants to see that yet, because as much as we love Petillon, we just watched you 50.
Yeah.
51. What was the
I mean, to be fair,
ridiculous.
it wasn't quite as much of a shout, but he did shout out Sean.
Yeah,
too.
outside of that, one body shot on him.
But the narrative that the UFC can at least spin, or at least that Sean will have, is, right, okay, I had hip surgery, I was going into that injured, the last round I had you on skates. Petillon didn't have him on skates at any point.
No.
Petillon didn't have him hurt or compromised. Whereas Sean can say, 5th round, you were running...
And it is also Sean O'Malley. I think that's something people forget. He's one of the biggest names.
And one thing that we're forgetting is Merab put on the performance that he did last night, injured.
Crazy. It's crazy, isn't
Mental.
it? That guy's unbelievable. He's actually he's in a really good position because I think for a while, partly due to his connection with Sterling, he was quite disliked, heavily hated, I'd argue, especially after the Aldo fight,
And
which you
again,
mentioned earlier.
that just shows the type of character that he is, right? They both are even. They refused to fight each other when they could have done. It was definitely, I mean, they're just too. I have nothing but good words to say about them.
One thing I will have to bring up, though, sorry to tell you,
No, sorry, Norris.
this is the Creators Podcast. I think it would only be right to highlight the job that Merab Dvalishvili has done in the last couple of years with his social media. And
Oh, so
Both of them,
so
actually.
fun, mate. He is such a funny guy.
has changed everything. Because then he started to get his personality across, and like you said, he started putting out his humour. Fans could start attaching themselves to him. So yes, he was coming out. He wasn't actually having performances that looked tremendously different. But the thing that you need in MMA to get a fan base, eventually they'll hate you if you become too successful, but you need to win. And he just kept winning. So you pair that with good skits, good memes, good marketing, and now you're starting to build. And we have conversations around people all the time into them that they don't understand that. Bilal understood that now.
Yeah.
And he's creating that. Yes, he's leaning into the hill, but this is all rehearsed. This is all WWE. The actions at the end of it when they get in the cage, they're not rehearsed. Everything else is history, just WWE characters, right? That's all it is. So,
Depending on the way you look at it as well, Merab has technically not lost a fight in the UFC, in my opinion.
Oh, no, he was out.
What?
He's talking about that mounted guillotine.
Well, that is one of the first. I think the first one he lost by decision, right? And it was a dodgy decision.
Oh, he lost two, didn't he?
There was
Went
one,
0-2, right?
yeah. And he made that round, in my opinion. The referee told him, I think the doctor told him to sit down and lay down. So it made it look like he was fucked, but he got told to sit down. I think if he stood up,
did you ask him about this?
he's spoken about it a lot. He's spoken about it a lot.
He's clearly a man of principle as well. So
Yeah,
I'd probably, if he said something, I'd be inclined to believe it.
But what happened was when the fight finished, the doctors came in and they were like, no, sit down, lay down. So obviously that's going to look bad. And Mark Goddard wasn't even the referee. He was like one of the side referees, and he basically gave the opinion that, he couldn't finish the fight, so you had to give it to him.
Fine margins. Not that it really matters now, though.
No.
I was going to say, because his fan perception, we've seen that redemption arc, and it's lined up perfectly with him becoming a champion, I think. We saw that full transition from, there's a difference between being disliked and being a heel. And he was definitely the former, for sure. So that sort of recovery arc, it's becoming this light carried as he's got the belt, obviously financially, and pay-per-view, getting percentage of the pay-per-view sales. It's all coming up really nicely for him, which I don't think it ever really did for Sterling. I never really think he shook that reputation, which I disagree with. I think that should never have really been a factor the moment he rematched Petr Yan and won that fight, because it was a close one, but I think there's no argument in scoring that the way the judges did at the time. But, unlike Merab, he just couldn't really shake that. It's a weird one, isn't it? I don't know.
You say about transition arcs. I think one of the best redemption arcs recently has to be Yubrashka. And we need to talk about this fight with him and Jamal Hill, because first and foremost, it was a phenomenal fight. It was in the 205 division, as things stand. It was as good a fight as you're going to see. It was pretty much strictly, I believe, a striking affair, and it was a thing of beauty. You didn't watch this one, did you?
I just saw the finish.
You saw the finish.
So what a fight.
Right.
Yeah.
But one thing I need to say, right, is I think the narrative going into this fight and all of Yuri's fights is he needs to put his hands up. He needs to work on his defense. Right and wrong. Because what people sometimes fail to factor in is, sure, you can make improvements to your defense. I agree with that. But if you're going to take Yuri Prochazka and try and dramatically change his style to where now he fights with a high guard,
Takes away the style that you love. This is the style that we
exactly.
got him to the dance.
Yeah.
I don't think you need to change it. You just need to refine it. And I think the refinements that he made, Leo, which stood out to me, were he didn't necessarily have his hands up a lot more, but he worked a lot on his head movement clearly.
Oh, for sure.
He was evading so many more punches in the pocket where we were still watching on the edge of our toes. But that's the behaviour he is. He puts you on the edge of his toes, because when you're flirting with danger, he's the man that you want to call. And we've said many times, and I said on my breakdown 100 times, as soon as he smells blood, there is no one better pushing that snowball down the mountain than Yuri Prochazka, and he almost always finds a finish. What did you think of the fight?
Well, when I watched it live, obviously last night, it was one of those rare moments where the finish caught me so off guard. I kind of nearly woke up the entire house. And the last time that happened was at 300 with Holloway Gaethje. And I think just looking at it, sort of isolating it, it's not like the craziest finish in the world, but I don't know if it's Yuri Prochazka's story. Maybe, I guess, of course, when he brought that, Ashley, that's it, out, who had cancer, obviously, which is obviously quite an inspirational story. But there was just something in me that just resonated with that finish, and maybe Jamal Hill has become a little bit more disliked, which doesn't help. But it was beautiful, because he's so unorthodox, isn't it? There's never a finish like a Yuri Prochazka finish. No one else can do it like he can, and maybe that's something that adds to it.
The way he was bobbing in and out for the finish was
just the slip. Yeah.
Oh mate, it was.
I think maybe the sound of the punch got picked up on the microphone as well, just enough. Yeah.
The one thing that I'll say with Yuri, which I've always said would be the best version of him, is if he can control the chaos.
Yes.
Control the chaos, right? Understand the moments to give and take. And when I saw he worked on his head movement, I thought, okay, it's still terrifying watching him fight, but this is a lot better. And I think one thing which he did, I believe, better than almost any other fights that I've seen of him, is he really picked his moments, but he also used that crazy style, and he used his weird movement patterns as setups. So I would see him use very funky movements dipping off to the right, but then he would load it with a right hand. And then the next time he dipped to the right, he'd throw the head kick off of it. And I was now seeing, okay, this is super, super high level striking, because you're using these weird herky-jerky motions, but you're then setting it up with attacks off of it. And then the third tier to that is the next time he'd throw that head kick, he'd throw it as a throwaway and then land a spinning back kick. So now he had 3 setups just to this weird dick that he was leaning on. I was thinking, wow, this is becoming a problem. And I'm getting ahead of myself, I am never someone for rematches, let alone trilogies. I am all in to see Yuri Prochazka, Alex Pereira 3, and I do not care how I sound. If he goes out there and gets another win against a Carlos Alberto or a Jan Blachowicz after London, it puts him in the driver's seat. And let's just say Alex Pereira gets through on Kalaev, puts him in the driver's seat to have the Max Holloway Volkanovski trilogy that we've seen before.
In terms of
2 losses, comes back for the 3rd. I believe it because of the character he is and because of the way he finishes fights. 27, I believe, off the top of my head. TKO knockout finish.
Mental. Kill or be killed.
He's such an entertaining fighter.
Yeah.
But to be honest, Jamal Hill took such an L. Such an L, mate.
You think? I think he looked alright in there.
Okay, well,
How do you prepare for a guy like that, though? Do you know what I
That's
mean?
true.
You can make anyone look.
Do you know why I think
amateurish.
he's taken an L? Like obviously, I didn't watch the full fight, right? But ultimately, the result is all that matters. And he got knocked out. And he did not do himself any favors since losing to Pereira at all. Like the way he carried himself, he's just not. He's talked a lot of shit, and you can't talk all this.
You got to back it up.
Yeah, you the way he spoke, you can't talk all that and then not win the next
Not
time.
in him. Leo's reused a couple of these toasty takes. Well, I genuinely believe this. I'm not saying this to be provocative.
I'm ready.
I don't think I've said it demonstratively, but I'm not.
In regards to a fan base perspective, that was the best result that could have happened to Jamal Hill. In regards to the long-term fan base, that's the best result that could have happened to Jamal Hill. And that, let me explain my word.
I think I'm with you.
Hiro Prochazka is the most beloved fighter. He's the most beloved. And like he said, he spoke all of this craziness after the Alex Pereira fight and in the build-up to this. If he goes out and knocks out Hiro Prochazka, sure, progresses his career and that's the better result for him. There's no disagreeing with that. I'm not deluded. I understand that. But from a fanfare perspective, it doubles down the hatred. You know how it is. Knocks out your favourite fighter, don't like him already, doubles down. What happened, what I've already seen, is now there's some wholesome footage of him and Yuri backstage, burying the hatchet, shaking, congratulations, being very respectful. After he took, by the way, we need to put this out there, some monstrous shots. Jamal Hill's chin is not like everyone else's. I saw it go 180 from a punch of Yuri Prochazka, who hits like a truck. So he had a good fight, took a lot of damage and kept firing, and ultimately lost to everyone's favourite fighter. I think that was the best outcome from a fan base perspective.
I think he's got to take advantage of it. That's the key.
All don't like it. All don't like it.
No, I think he's right, provided Jamal takes the right steps to sort of, grow those seeds that have been planted, if you will.
I've already seen that he has, because he went to his corner and his team and he shook their hand and was being very respectful. And I believe he comes out and says, Yuri was the better man than I. I'm guessing, I haven't seen if he has yet or not. Paul's not convinced.
I think he's come out of this hated more.
Nah, it remains to be seen. I think most of
Of course.
What basis is that?
Well, I'm only going based off of my own judgment. How I'm judging this completely.
This is just like
Yeah, but it's like I can only go by what I'm like. For me, the way I've seen that is like you lost fans. I think you would have gained more fans if he would have won. I don't think I necessarily believe that knocking out Yuri or even beating Yuri.
You think he would have gained more fans from knocking out a fan?
Yeah, no way.
I do.
Name a fighter, there's very few fighters that are more loved than Prochazka. Think about Merab when he beat Aldo.
Give me a case study here and now. I'm glad I got back up on this one because usually
I'm sorry, I'm with you. Merab was more hated when he beat Aldo, even though that win progressed his career.
It was a very different fight, though. That was
True,
a boring
fair point.
fight. That was a boring fight.
I'm yet to see it.
Again, I can only go by my opinion, right? I can only go by my opinion. And for me, from the way I like fighters, right? Like, if you're going to talk shit, you need to back it up. So for me, if he would have went out and knocked out Yuri, obviously I would have been gutted because I like him. It was like, mate, Jamal Hill, do you know what? He might have been right about the Pereira fight. You know, look how he just smashed Yuri Prochazka. That's no joke. Do you know what? I've got more ratings for him, if anything. The fact that he would have, it didn't happen, right? But I would have probably had more respect for him. If anything, he's like, wow, like, I didn't expect you to do that, and you did it. I was like, you know what? Fair enough. But now that he's lost, and yeah, you talk about, oh yeah, he's got such a big chin and stuff. I always find whenever you talk about a fight, no, it's not.
It's not a good thing. But my point is, I'm not sitting here saying, oh, that's a fantastic thing. That's the best takeaway to a fight. But as Leon knows, when you're talking about backlash or fan base, these things come into it. That this is how fan base.
I feel like I have to say, because as much as I literally was just agreeing with you, I think the perfect example that probably backs up your point is Ilia Topuria. Name a fight, knocking out Max Holloway, knocking out Alexander Volkanovski. I wouldn't say he's that hated. I'd say he's revered, if anything.
Topuria is probably on.
And Topuria's knocked out two fan favourites back to back.
I say the only hate that Topuria has gotten, and I don't like the fact that he said it. He's meant to be a massive Real Madrid fan, and then he's cussed out Ronaldo.
Do you not get this man?
He's a menace, man.
Creepiest love affair. The first.
No, but it's true.
I tried to tell him. Don't really care about much anymore. He's sitting there reading me out how those stats from the last.
You want to feel this? You're not actually a club fan. You just love like one.
No,
player.
I'm Man United fan.
Oh, that's actually worse.
Yeah, we lost today to Brighton.
I was sitting there trying to explain to him. I have no opinion on this. So this is he's sitting there going, no, but in 1962, Ronaldo. Oh, you've lost me massively. But I'm guessing it's. I was going to say no, but from Madeira.
No.
I know it's just a Manchester United league, but I'm thinking, it's your hometown. It's not Maltese.
No,
He's
but no, like you joke about it, but that is a big thing that I did see on social media. Is he literally when he beat Volkanovski, he got walked out of the Bernabeu Stadium.
Yeah.
You can't be. He literally said fuck Ronaldo until the end of time.
Well, there's United players that you don't like. You cuss them out, exactly. So
Nah, but it's different. The reason why that happened was because when Ngannou was fighting Ferreira in PFL, them headers, Nick Sick and Ronaldo were speaking about the upcoming Holloway Topuria fight, and he was basically saying that he didn't think Topuria had enough to beat Holloway, and Topuria's ego, like McGregor, got very damaged from that, and then since then he's gone full.
Stop saying that.
Well, no, but it's my boy. Well, it's clearly because you're a casual. You don't understand what's going on. Not very. And he's like a super fan of Messi. So, but like, if you look at the comments of when it happened, it's like you can't be calling yourself a massive Real Madrid fan and then cussing out the greatest.
I think he's just playing the game. I don't think there's anything deeper than that. He knows us, but he can't
figure out.
No, mate, I'm a massive Topuria fan, but you can't be getting. You can't.
Why not? Why can't you?
You can't have the club, the place that you want to go. You want to bring.
What's he gonna do about it?
He wants to bring.
Yeah,
the
you
UFC,
beat everyone up anyway.
No, but he wants to bring the UFC to the Bernabeu.
That is one of the reasons.
Fair point, actually.
One of the reasons why they actually said no. So I get what you're saying. It's maybe not the most spectacular angle for marketing, but
at the end of the day, if you're a fighter that's undefeated and you've been knocking out everyone, like you said, the ego got hurt and he reacted. And I think
he's the most devastating grappling knockout artist ever because he's got ridiculous jiu-jitsu.
Everyone forgets that. Yeah. I did a documentary on him.
One of
my
his first
YouTube
6
video.
fights was submissions, right?
Mate, honestly, yeah. I was covering his early career. Just submission. It's people forget. He only really, so versatile, everything. And so people forget how versatile he actually is. He only really started developing his hands later on into his game, right before he really got into the UFC. And then you just see those even the early UFC performances. Was it? I can't remember the guy's name, Jackson. So he just, this bomb overhand right, and then he just smashes. You know when guys, Damon Jackson, when guys fall down against the cage and they just sort of crumple and then they follow up with the shot.
Knockout of Jai Herbert was fucking.
I was there for that.
Yeah,
terrifying. You were there as well. All three of us were there. That was terrifying. It's a different ball game when a knockout like that silences the home crowd. That's the difference. That's when you go with major mark.
Paddy to get that fight one day.
I don't think it's as far away as everyone says it is. Definitely, if you asked that a couple of years ago, people would have laughed.
Paddy Frimpong stuff?
I did, yeah. Not sure how to feel about that. Be interesting.
In what way?
Well,
how would you go up on Leo? I'm sitting in the middle of like this.
It's more so that he beat him and Frimpong tapped, then he didn't let go. I feel like at that point the beef's done. You tap, it's done. You don't need anything.
Proving a little point though, isn't it?
Grow up a little bit. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. I like Paddy, but of course, but I feel like you set up the whole environment to settle the beef. Then as soon as they tap, it's done. It's settled. It's done. Yeah. And I know they sort it out afterwards, but I don't know. They left a little bit of a poor taste in my mouth, but
it's like when Khabib fucking choked out McGregor, and then that all kicked off because he's like, "Why did you tap?"
I think the interesting thing with that,
when you go so far in a beef, you're like, "Oh, we're gonna have a straightener," and then you end up grappling. Like I understand why Eden won't let go. It's kind of like, look, that is just literally pure like, you are my bitch. And that's all that was.
I think
It's a fine line. Fine line.
I can't remember actually seeing it myself, but I did see it in the comments. I don't know if it's 100% true, but apparently Frimpong was sort of trying to land a couple of elbows as well, which kind of leads me to the point of it is mad that happened, because Paddy isn't just in the UFC anymore. He's
a prize fighter.
He's a prize fighter. He's got big zeros on him.
I'm sure Dana wouldn't have had any of that on his radar. He would have been fuming if when he found out. I'm guessing.
It's a different ballgame, isn't it?
It only just takes a little cut above the eyebrow and, okay, maybe we can't go into fight camp in 3 weeks' time, right? You got to wait for that to heal. Or, I don't know, any small injury that can come from that. And it's mad because he probably, I don't have any information on what he's getting paid, and it's not really that relevant. My point is, it'll be a big paycheck. I would guess somewhere in the region $200,000 when he fights and wins. So you're putting big numbers out there.
So I kind of rate it to be back to say then. It's like, no, this.
He really is about that life.
Of course he is.
He really is. I love the idea of him fighting Michael Chandler. I think that's such a
I think, yeah. Honestly, it really impressed me. The Ferguson performance was the one where I said, okay, I think he's starting to prove people wrong here. And we really saw some improvements in his game. And that Bobby Green performance, for me, that cemented it as him. He can fight for a title. Genuinely, he can. I think he can handle himself.
The performance was
so good.
Believe it.
Honest, do you train jiu-jitsu?
Yeah.
You know, that transition from the guillotine into the triangle blew my mind. I didn't even think about doing that. Like, I love triangles as well. It's like my most... It's my thing in jiu-jitsu. It's kind of bad. You know, you get too obsessed with a submission and then you just neglect
mine's the head and arm.
everything else.
Love the head and arm.
Oh, God, I'd hate to... Oh, arm triangle. I hate to spar with you. I get tapped to that all the time. But my point is that transition is just like... It shows you the level. Like, in terms of grappling, we've mentioned it
He's
before.
so good.
Oh, it's just different gravy, isn't it?
Him against 10 Marines.
Yeah, taps all. No, it's more than that, isn't it? Something ridiculous.
It's something ridiculous, and it's like a non-stop
tank. Yeah.
I've mentioned it many, many times. And you don't always have the privilege to have this sort of access to the other side of the fighters. So when they're fighting someone else, you don't always have the transparency into their camp. So maybe it would be different if I had a rounded view. But the reason I say that is because when I went up to Liverpool and watched Paddy's King of the Mat, where it is basically non-stop grappling, submissions only, last person wins. And I saw him go for an hour and a half, flat, no breaks, against the best jiu-jitsu player in that gym, and just boom, 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 submissions. And people can make...
When you see jiu-jitsu like that on a mat, there's just something different. Like, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there, but the most impressive jiu-jitsu I've ever seen firsthand was Andy Varela. Do you know who he is?
I'm not like really well versed in it. I'm not. I love the game. I love training, but I'm just not. Yeah, honestly, I couldn't tell you outside of like
Jack Grant's like
the
that.
big
Jack Grant, successful, doesn't watch MMA. But yeah, Andy Varela, he is the head coach. Yeah. He was the head coach, or he is the head coach rather of 10th Planet in Vegas. I mean, mate, it was when we were filming Merab. I mean, he was training at 10th Planet Vegas. And mate, Andy Varela, everyone was trying to like get him, and he was just playing.
Like,
I literally was looking at it, and he literally was like tapping people out and like just making it look so easy. I was like, what?
And that's how, like, you know, when you roll with a black belt,
Yeah.
right? I don't know how long have you been training, but
I'm a striker, really.
Oh, right, so
I've not really got that many.
yeah. Have you sparred with a black belt before? Yeah, you know what it's like, right?
It's
just
fucking
like
playing them with their food, mate.
and that's just like that could be just like a decent level black belt, and then you're talking about the cream of the crop, the highest precipice in jiu-jitsu. I can't even imagine that. But
Owen Livesey as well, so Owen Livesey fucking grapple. Jack Grant's grappling is really good.
it's just rolling with guys who are at that level. I feel like it's a necessary experience for in any martial art, really, just to go through that and realize how far away you are from being good at that sort of aspect. It's ridiculous.
It's a body language with chess.
I've never felt anything like it, genuinely. Like sparring with someone, and they are 3 steps ahead of you, more than that, really. Yeah. And anything you try and do, they've read it. They know what's coming. And you try and escape, it's a trap, and suddenly you're getting mounted and it's getting choked out. It's like
I think
ridiculous.
if we're talking grappling and if we're talking deficits in grappling, I think someone that is going to be on everyone's.
Oh mate,
That's fucking awful.
that is
man.
criminal. I don't think I've ever done that in my life. I don't know if that picked up on the microphones.
Yeah.
But he has just cracked his neck about 3 or 4 different ways, something like that. That's horrid.
That's bad.
You actually disgust me. I hate shit like that.
Yeah, people that just sit there and just crack their knuckles.
Oh no, no,
bad.
awful.
Very intense addiction. I won't lie.
So that's your fetish.
Vile, eh? What?
There you go. You know what it is? It only takes one good one, and you can just get hooked. Once you get one...
Are you talking about neck cranks or something else?
Once
What are
you
we
get a good
talking
neck
about?
crack, it only takes one, and you just can't...
It takes one and you're dead, mate.
Exactly. True.
You just get hooked. So where I was going with that is obviously with the grappling, one person whose blueprint, let's say, great, we'll wrap up the 311 chat on this, and we've got a few topics, and we'll round it off on that at the end. But one person that I wanted to discuss that definitely stood out in this card, maybe for worse and not better, was Painter Talbot, who's obviously been very high on all of our radars for a long time, and rightly so. I don't think that we were wrong for thinking that, but the blueprint of how to beat him and where his gaping weaknesses were shown last night. What did you think about that one? Because I imagine you was a little bit...
I lost money thanks to him. He was on my parlay. I made money overall though, so I can't complain. But it was the hair. Lost all his aura. Shouldn't have done it. Cut the hair. He looked like a contender series fighter. Do you know what I mean? He just didn't look like he needed to be in there. And then fast. Okay, I'm fucking you a little bit, but I mean, to be fair, you talk about the Sean O'Malley shorts.
I stand by one of, and people laugh at this and they think it's stupid. And I'm not saying he lost that fight categorically because he wasn't wearing pink shorts. But if you're asking me whether those things play a factor into the mindset and the fact that...
I still can't back that. I'm sorry. I'm trying.
No. You, if you don't back it, you're not understanding what I'm saying. I'm not saying he lost the fight because his shorts were not pink. I'm saying, was it a factor? Was it to some degree a factor going into the fight, which I believe impacted? Yes, 100%. Every time Sean O'Malley has gone out to perform, he has been the guy. Whether he's top of the card or in the middle of the card, he's gone out with that mindset. Now he's going into a show which was all based around the place and nothing to do with him. He's going into a main event where he's wearing bland black shorts in a spectacle which is nothing about him. He's the superstar. I think that definitely played some role. Not a massive role, but some role. I maintain, regardless.
Let's go back. I mean, but in truth, he didn't look great. I don't know if you watched the fight back, but his grappling left a lot to be desired. More so the wrestling, to be honest with you. He seemed to... I think the biggest weakness someone can make at that level in MMA is just accepting.
Showing that.
Yeah, it's showing, but also just accepting those positions. And then...
Wasn't he taken down very quickly in the first fight?
Pretty much straight away. Think of a good example, Bilal against Leon. That was pretty much straight away as well. And that's when I knew I was losing money that night as well. So pretty much the same thing.
UFC, man. It's so hard.
Yeah, it is crazy. But yeah, for me, the grappling obviously is the biggest weak point. But it's a necessary thing. I think Chase Hooper is a good example of that. He's a guy who, came to the UFC quite young, even younger than Payton. And really, he lost early on in his career. I think he had a pretty brutal loss. And he's came back from that. And now he's on an absolute tear. He's grown, learned from his mistakes. And it's a necessary thing for most people, because the reality is, unless you're a guy like Khabib Nurmagomedov, you're not going to go through this sport unscathed, with a few setbacks. So better to get them out of the way now, rather than near the end of your career, and learn from them, which I'm sure he will. He's clearly got very cerebral. He's got the mind to figure these things out and improve. And I'm sure, it'll be a bump in the road, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. I think he's the type of person to sort of understand that there are positive.
He's on that new wave, isn't he?
Nothing really positive to come from that, but the positive is, okay, you went 15 minutes with a veteran, you didn't take much damage, and you took your first loss. So you've been very exposed to what you need to improve on. You got some good reps and good experience, and you have a good opportunity to rebuild your brand. Talking about rebuilding your brand, Paul, I'll chuck this one over to you. Last night we had one of the biggest fights in combat sports, Afghan Dan and Licky T. And then after that, we had one of the biggest names still in combat sports. I do believe that's a fair statement for me to make, is Darren Till. What did you think of the fight? And then more so, double-ended question, where do you think he goes from here?
I thought he could have finished Anthony Taylor in the first round. I think he just didn't want to.
You reckon?
I honestly think...
I don't agree with that either. We're
thought-
ganging up on you again now.
Mate, I thought he was fighting at about 60%, 60%. I think he could have finished him, but he didn't want to because this guy, Anthony Taylor, is not in his weight division. He took the fight and he was like, the way I saw that was that he was just playing with his food. I'll be honest, he could, mate.
Could he have stepped it up earlier? I agree with. Did he put off not finishing him? Absolutely no way. If he could have knocked him out in the first, he could have knocked him out.
I agree.
That's what I believe. Could he have stepped it up?
Darren Till was not asked about Misfits one bit.
Then why is he doing it? This is what I mean, respectfully. Well, this is my point. I don't think... to be honest with you, if he fights in the UFC, I think he'd be earning more in the UFC than he would in Misfits. I don't think he's earning as that much as Misfits as you think. I'm going to be honest with you. It's just disappointing to watch, isn't it? Misfits. It really is. I'm going to be honest with you. It's a UFC caliber fighter, one of England's, at the time, top prospects, top ever fighters. You know, was on the brink of winning a world title, you know, fought for a world title rather against Tyron Woodley, and obviously didn't go his way, but he proved that he was at the top level. Had probably the closest fight with Robert Whittaker for a time until Dricus du Plessis beat him. And, you know, I think doing stuff like this, doing these, I'm going to call them gimmick fights because that's what it is, really. You know, it just tarnishes the legacy that was there. And,
you think? I don't know.
And he has the striking ability to hang at the top level.
I think
it's just the decisions. That's what it is for me. It's I don't know if it's the financial decisions or what, but maybe it's a mental thing.
I think
they're all the wrong ones.
Definitely one thing
I don't
for
get
sure. Like, not have to worry about the wrestling and the grappling. I just think that easy money. Why wouldn't you do it? I think, you know, I don't think it was a coincidence that in the fifth round when Anthony Taylor landed a few strikes and blew up his nose, he then finished in the next round. I don't think that's a coincidence.
That's a fair point, actually.
That was he came out skip round so different. Like for me, that was he was playing around. He was playing around. Yeah, I'm not like it didn't like the atmosphere was fucking shy because it was Misfits.
Yeah, and
the fact that I think he finished him right after, I think spoke volumes to me. Yeah. Like he came out, I was like, okay, I'm not letting you do that. I'm gonna put you in your place. And when he turned it on,
I don't disagree. I don't disagree with that. He could have turned it on earlier and gave him more danger. But what I would say as well is you also have to factor in early in these fights, you have to fight with a sense of caution to an extent because, yeah, that may be a gimmick fight and that's why that's even more high stakes. That's exactly...
Yeah, I know.
If that's Dricus du Plessis, I know he's already fought it, but if he's going out to face Dricus du Plessis, of course that's a high stakes fight, but that's a world-class fighter who's beaten everyone, and there's a good chance that you could lose and it wouldn't be outside the realm possibility. You walk in there now with an Anthony Taylor, everyone in the world, including Anthony Taylor, believes that you're going to win. You have to go and win now. So I don't think it's any surprise that in the first couple of rounds, he's sort of, okay, what am I dealing with here? What looks is he actually going to give me? So I don't disagree with you in regards, I think he could have stepped up earlier, but I definitely think there was a lot on the line for Darren Till because, yes, there is money on the line. There is attention. But also it's more on the back end, what can you create from this? Because he jumps on the mic and says, I want KSI, Tommy Fury, Jake Paul, but the major one.
Masvidal.
Bingo.
In boxing though, right?
That's the fight to me.
Yeah. I don't want to hear it, man.
Jorge Masvidal versus Darren Till in boxing is the fight to make.
I'm just tired of it. Because to me, the one thing I really just dislike about it, it's the contrast. No, it's the contrast though, because if you go on, he's, you know, very vocal on social media, for better or worse. And he's always arguing with random people on Twitter saying, oh, I've done this, I've done that.
Darren Till.
Yeah.
He's the worst.
He's awful. But it's like...
He apparently, from a lot of things that I know from Liverpool, is that he's also been on like doing some really stupid shit. Like I've heard that like a lot of people have been trying to get to him.
Yeah, really? I mean, yeah. Are you allowed to talk about that or not? The way you're talking, I'm assuming no.
Well, serious and not giving us any soup. We always like to
no, we do.
From what I've heard is that he's been like going around just... He knocked out this kid in Liverpool. I don't mean literal kid, but like someone that you wouldn't want to mess with. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And apparently he'd been like trying to stay out of trouble because like people have been looking for him.
That's really... That makes sense actually, because I don't know. He did that interview with MMA Guru a while back, and he said he was in some random person's house. He didn't even know where he was. So he was like, he's just the most. And out of context, then you don't think much of it. You just think it's Darren Till being Darren Till.
I'm a fan of Darren Till, though. I like him.
It's hard. My point is, it's hard to like him because the dissonance, the contrast is so obvious. Because he says these things, you know, arguing with random people, saying, "Oh, I'm going to be champion," you know, I'll do all this, do that, and then he's going on fighting random bums.
Do you like McGregor?
No, I don't.
You don't like McGregor?
I absolutely despise him.
Really?
Of course. Not a fan of him.
I think
it's the same thing.
They're characters that you either hate or love, right?
Yeah, of course.
They're you know, the things that they speak about, they want to do. I think it's just.
But the difference with McGregor is he's been and done it, so I can't really fault the guy. Same with Tapora, like he talks a big game, but he goes and sets out and does these things. Darren Till's still talking about it, 5-6 years later, while he's fighting, you know, random cans on misfits. Like, come on, like I don't want to hear it. If you
could have been a worse can, could be KSI fighting Wayne.
Oh my God, yeah. I don't even want to open that can of worms. My point is just back up what you say. Do you know what I mean? If you're going to say you're going to be a world champion. If you're going to say you're going to be a world champion, you're going to be in the UFC, get back in there and do it. Prove everyone wrong. Because I think his striking is still at the very top level. I don't think there's many people still in middleweight.
He wasn't even that bad, was it?
It was good. Yeah. And against Brunson as well.
Yeah.
It was just the fitness and some of the defensive wrestling, which can be improved. He's still got time, which is the frustrating thing.
I don't think he's arsed though, mate.
But I know, but don't act like you are. You're not then. You know, or you are rather. Don't act like you are arsed when you're actually not. Because I think that's what he's doing.
Yeah, but again, these type of characters, man, you know, fighters are so messed up in their own head.
I don't think he's a character. I think it's just him, isn't it?
Well, that's what I mean. Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, you're getting punched and kicked for your entirety of your developing years. You're not sane. You're not a sane person. Darren Till is not a sane person.
Not in the slightest.
I think trying to make rational predictions for people that aren't rational is difficult.
So I think the difficulty with Darren Till is he had all of the talent. Sure, you can talk about him being potentially rushed and having a couple of knockouts, a couple of setbacks. I don't really think that was the thing which really...
It was the mental game for him.
I don't even know if I just think it was... Listen, it could be a number of... It is of factors. I'm not saying it's one thing. It's
being coached by a nonce.
Oh my God, yeah. I remember when you told me that. That blew my mind.
That's not been confirmed.
No, it's not been confirmed. No.
That is crazy, isn't it?
Wasn't the route I was going down. I was going down more the route of...
I think he just made some bad decisions in his career. I think he overtrains, first and foremost. And I think he went into fights like Garrett Bronson, where he had overtrained, got injuries off the back of it, and then goes into a fight at 185 pounds where he's undersized anyway. I believe he's a tweener between 170 and 185. He goes into these fights. Yes, he has a slight deficit in grappling. I don't think he's as bad a defensive grappler.
No, I agree.
No one was taking him down at will before. But now he's going into fights with the likes of Derek Bronson with one leg and less size than him, and obviously a deficit in skill if it's purely wrestling. And he's getting out wrestled. It's like, that doesn't shock me. In my opinion, that's bad decision making on his end rather than it was a skill deficit. I still believe that there's a reason why Israel was always petitioning for the Darren Till fight, because it was a great matchup for them both. It was going to be a striking matchup. You don't think if you chuck him in there with Rob, Drickers, Izzy, Nasruddin Imavov, and it stays standing with any of them, they're all going to wipe the floor with them? Absolutely not. I don't believe that at all, but again, it's just what does he really want to do?
But I think you just said it. He's a striker. You look at McGregor, right? McGregor, he's only really asked about doing stand-up fights now. He's not really showing the interest to get back into MMA. He wants to box. But that's what I mean. When you get to a position where you have so much value to yourself that you can make these things happen for yourself, you don't have to worry about being wrestled. You don't have to be worried about taking on. You know, you talked about the other training. I know firsthand how bad the training was at Carbon. So bad. Like, I've heard of stories.
In what way?
Overtraining, but like...
Oh, right.
I've heard of...
So a bad regimen.
I've heard of Colin. I won't say which fighter it is, but a friend of mine, he used to train at Carbon for a few years. One of Darren Till's main sparring partners for a little bit. I've heard stories of him being knocked out and then coming back, or being, I don't know whether being knocked out or being like knocked down, like really being out of it, and being told, get back in there.
Fuck. Really?
And I can imagine stuff like that. If that's one,
Happens at a lot of places around the country. I think people would be surprised. Fans behind the sport would be surprised.
It's
how
not good
times things like that.
but that gym specifically was just too much, man. Like too violent, too evil, too.
So it's coming from you. That's crazy.
Mate,
All after the spot.
Mate, honestly, so I was at Four Corners, right? So what I've told you about Four Corners, imagine that worse. Every single round in Calvon was trying to kill you.
See, that's not productive. No. It gets to a point where, yeah, there is time for stuff like that.
Yeah.
You know, but 24 is, well, I don't know,
He was
24/7.
he was having like full-blown fights in the gym, 100% fights.
It's ridiculous. That's just, yeah, it doesn't achieve anything.
Well,
You're not
friend.
yeah.
People like Tom Aspinall's left.
Yeah, very true, actually.
I guess a good place to sort of maybe round this off, just like I said earlier, is obviously a creators podcast as well. And for those that are listening, maybe that aren't as familiar with your work, take us through maybe just briefly what 2024 is going to look like for you in the MMA creators perspective, because you have a couple of projects underway at the moment.
Yeah.
So just maybe take us through those and any others, not necessarily goals, but directions that you think you're going to take content in this year within MMA.
So the podcast is something I'm really going to be pushing. I really want to be doing a lot more interviews, like with broader kind of topics of conversation and guests, but I really want to do more MMA stuff again. I mean, I'm the commentator and presenter for Kingdom, which is a fight show in Liverpool, which is going to be, I mean, it's had a really successful early start to their career, but it's going to be, I think, a lot bigger this year. So pushing more of like the TV presenting and the commentating. And the next show is actually the 22nd of Feb, which is in a month's time, and I'm going to be commentating with Daddy Roberts, like 15 fight UFC veteran, and Dean Garnett, PFL fighter. So that'll be cool. I'm working on 2 documentaries at the moment. One's on Chanel Dyer, who unfortunately had to pull out of her last fight. She was meant to be fighting for the world title, so it's remained to be seen as to what her journey is going to look like this year because of the whole mess with PFL.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's kind of more of a longer term project because I consider Chanel a great friend now, and it's really nice to see the journey that she's on. And then we're also doing a documentary which hopefully will be sold to Netflix this year, which is going to be on a Slovenian fighter who's had a very colourful life, Bojan Košednar. He's like an ex-gangster, like told us he used to do like armed robberies and he was an extortionist, like crazy.
Lee Murray vibes.
Yeah, legit like Liam. He told us that he did an armed robbery 4 days before he fought Paul Daly on Cage Rage, which is his first and last. Wait. Yeah. And they all did, didn't it? Or it might have been Cage Warriors. I don't know what. It was like 2007, 2008. So it might have been the end of Cage.
Yeah,
Rage, Cage Warriors.
Yeah, Cage Rage was floating around.
A little bit. Yeah, I think it was just near the end of it. Something like that.
And yeah, just hopefully you just see my face around the space a bit more.
Well,
we're going to be doing some stuff in the UFC in London.
Sure, yeah. We've got UFC London coming up. I'm sure we'll chat more about that on podcast in the build up to that. But going to have pretty sick pop up, to be honest. I'm really looking forward to that. I think this one's
So am I.
It's going to be a lot bigger and better than the previous one.
And less space.
This up. It's unbelievable. But let everyone know where they can find you in the socials.
So Paul's Pod is at pauls.pod on Instagram, and then my personal page is just at Paul_RPM. But Paul's Pod is the main one on YouTube as well. Paul's Pod. You'll see a lot of different stuff over it this year.
And then obviously the work with Amity Studios as well.
Yeah, so Amity Studios. So this is the production company that I work for. It's my good friend's company. You can follow them at _Amity Studio on Instagram. If you want to come and use the space or see the space as well, you can do that too. And those documentaries are with Amity Studio too, so a good year ahead.
Well, that's a good place to wrap up our second in-person podcast of the year. Beautiful setting, beautiful company, beautiful conversation. As always, keep it casual.